should vote. Don't believe that one vote doesn't count.
Welcome to Marijuana, Compassion, and Common Sense, the show that tells you the truth about marijuana, the facts about medical marijuana, and tries to clear the legal mumble-jumble that surrounds your ability to use this important medicinal herb that is so critical to your health and well-being. But good evening, my name is Lanny Swardlow. I am director of the Marijuana Anti-Prohibition Project, and sitting here in me with our studio, which today is the Cathedral City Public Library, is Red Taupe.
Right,
Tuff. T-U-F-F?
No, T-O-P-H.
T-O-P-H. Oh, brother. Okay.
Such a name.
Anyway, Red's here with me. Red is director of our High Desert chapter up in Joshua Tree, and I'm director of the Cathedral City chapter and kind of run the organization.
Lanny is our fearless leader.
Yeah, fearless is right. More like stupid. But anyway,
not at all.
Anyway,
he's been a blessing to all of us, and we really appreciate your part in MAP, man. It wouldn't be for you if there wasn't MAP.
Thank you. I can do without the blessing. Anyway, we're here to invite you. We're going to talk. We got a great interview on tonight's show, but we want to invite you to come to our meetings. This is the TV show we hope will excite you about this topic and make you want to learn more and get involved with us. We meet every month, twice a month. We meet on the first Sunday of every month at 3 p.m. at the Cathedral City Public Library at 33520 Date Palm Drive. And it's a great meeting. We always have a lot of medical marijuana patients there and advocates. We usually have a speaker. So come on down to one of those meetings. And then Red runs the meeting in the High Desert at Joshua Tree, which meets on the second Wednesday of every month at 7:30 p.m. at the Joshua Tree Community Center, which is at 6171 Sunburst Avenue. And talk about respectable places to meet at.
Yeah.
Libraries, community centers. How much more respectable can you get?
Well, medical marijuana is about the community. It's about helping people out.
And it's all about respect. Let me tell you, it's all about respect, because I sure respect marijuana.
For the amount of good it does in society and how much it's hidden from us, the amount of good it does. And if you would get out, come to the meetings, start your own meetings, get involved, you'd find out how much good it's doing. It deserves a lot more respect than it gets.
Yes, like Rodney Dangerfield, it doesn't get no respect.
And it deserves
but there's some of us who really respect it really well. And talking about respect, our interview today is a continuation of our interview from the last show, and this person does have everyone's respect. It's one of the top pulmonary researchers in the United States. It's Dr. Donald Tashkin. Dr. Tashkin is a research doctor at UCLA, and he is world famous for many of his studies done on lung function. And he is specialized in the function of lungs regarding cannabis and tobacco and cocaine. And a lot of his studies center on their effects on the lungs. And he was the person that did the studies that showed that marijuana smoke contains the same carcinogens that tobacco smoke contains. And but then he did the study which showed that marijuana doesn't cause lung cancer, and that's what we're kind of talking about. This study that showed that if you smoke marijuana, you're no more likely to get lung cancer than if you don't smoke marijuana. And there's
Lanny?
Yes.
He took that study from the point of view of proving that marijuana causes lung cancer.
That's right.
That's the way he started out.
Right.
He was determined to prove it, and he found the facts didn't support it.
That's right. His hypothesis was marijuana causes lung cancer because it contains the same carcinogens that tobacco smoke causes. And so he was as shocked as anybody when the results that came in. Anyway, we're going to talk to him about it today. He's going to talk a little bit about the medicinal benefits of marijuana, and I think you're going to find his conclusion about marijuana when he ends the interview, because I asked him a question about, so has your mind changed on marijuana? And I think you're going to find the answer to that. Very interesting, but you're going to have to stick around for the whole interview to get the answer to that. So without any further delay, here is Dr. Donald Tashkin. We're back today with Dr. Donald Tashkin at the UCLA Medical Research Center. For those of you who were on our last show, you saw that great interview we did with him. We're going to continue it today. Thank you for joining us again, Doctor. Last time you were talking about how your study on the relationship between marijuana and tobacco and lung cancer kind of showed that there was no, and correct me if I'm wrong in this, but that marijuana smoking did not increase a person's risk of getting lung cancer. And we kind of ended by talking about a little bit of a possible protective effect. You said it was not an unreasonable hypothesis. So this is something that should be looked into. Are you going to be doing that kind of a study, or do you know anyone who is going to be studying if there is any potential protective effect?
Well, I know that there are a number of investigators who are interested in the anti-tumoral effect, or the possible anti-tumoral effect of THC, particularly Italian investigators who are experts in cannabinoid chemistry. THC belongs to a group of compounds called cannabinoids, and they're interested in elucidating the mechanism of that anti-tumoral effect. But they're looking at mechanisms in animal models and cell culture systems that may or may not be relevant to the human condition. I didn't mention that there's one other possible mechanism that might explain our results, and that is that even though smoking one joint a day of marijuana might be equivalent to smoking 4 tobacco cigarettes, it amplifies the effect of lesser numbers of joints of smoking compared to tobacco cigarettes, the number of tobacco cigarettes that are generally smoked. Nonetheless, there are very few marijuana smokers who smoke as much tobacco as tobacco smokers, even when you use that 4-to-1, correct for that 4-to-1 equation. Also, that 4-to-1 equation is probably not accurate because marijuana joints are not of equal weight to tobacco cigarettes. It's probably more like 2-to-1. So, and we know that if you smoke less than about a half a pack of cigarettes a day, that's 10 cigarettes a day, that your risk for developing cancer is not that much greater than a never smoker. And even if you smoke up to 1 pack a day, it's still not that much greater. So there's a dose response with tobacco. So if you take 1 pack a day for, let's say, 20 years is 20 pack years. Well, in order to the equivalent amount of marijuana joints to 20 pack years, that is 20 cigarettes a day for 20 years. So that's 400, that would be equivalent to 400 joint years. So, or let's say there's a 2-to-1 ratio of exposure, so that would be 100 joint years. Well, we studied damn few patients with 100 joint years. We studied a couple. So it may be that people who smoke marijuana just don't smoke enough to expose their lungs to sufficient quantity of carcinogens to produce these changes. I can tell you that our research focus has shifted to the immune effects, the effects of THC on immunity, which does have relevance to medicinal marijuana. We know that THC is a powerful immune suppressant, and in fact, an anti-inflammatory compound. In fact, one of the possible reasons why people who smoke marijuana don't seem to be at increased risk of developing emphysema is that to develop emphysema, you have to activate certain inflammatory cells in the lung, known as alveolar macrophages. Well, we have shown that THC impairs the activity of these cells. So in a sense, that might be protective against the development of COPD or emphysema, but it could have a harmful side as well. Its anti-inflammatory effect is a two-edged sword, because you need those inflammatory cells to protect you against bacteria and other microorganisms. So it's possible that people who smoke marijuana, particularly a lot of marijuana, may be at increased risk of pneumonia and other respiratory infections, particularly if they have underlying immune deficits, as is true in patients with HIV disease and patients with cancer on cancer chemotherapy. So we're interested in further exploring the effects of THC on the immune system and the ability of the immune system to mount, for example, a response to vaccines. It's conceivable that could be impaired. That's the direction of our research now.
Okay. We're talking about the dangers of marijuana seem to be what you're concentrating on as danger of smoked marijuana. I'm wondering, are you looking into any kind of studies of people who vaporize marijuana instead?
Well, I think that's a reasonable approach to developing THC or marijuana in a form that would be eliminate exposure of the lung to carcinogens in the smoke and other noxious substances in the smoke, the oxidants, etc. So that vaporization would seem to be a reasonable approach.
What is your opinion of the medical benefits of marijuana? Is there medical benefits to utilization of marijuana?
Well, I know that THC has a lot of potential medicinal value, and I don't think there's any controversy about that in terms of its anti-nociceptive effect. I mean, it's a reduction in pain. There's some evidence of reduced spasticity in animal models in particular. And obviously, we know about the effects on nausea and vomiting and on appetite. And THC is approved for use, as you know. It may be a form that's not that agreeable as a capsule. I think Marinol is a capsule.
Yes, it is.
So there are clearly medicinal benefits. There might, in fact, the anti-inflammatory effect could be beneficial. We have a lot of anti-inflammatory compounds that we use for a variety of inflammatory diseases, like rheumatoid arthritis. We know that inflammation is associated with many diseases, including acute stroke, that magnifies the impact of the stroke. And there's some suggestion that THC and perhaps other cannabinoids may have some beneficial effect in reducing the extent of brain damage following a stroke. So yes, there's a lot of potential benefit. The question is, how do you deliver THC in a way as to optimize the benefit-risk ratio?
Right. That's almost any medicine is like that. You talked about Marinol, which is synthetic THC, and I know there's another drug just recently approved for nausea and vomiting that has a synthetic THC. Is there any difference between synthetic THC and natural THC?
Well, I don't know that there's any difference between synthetic THC itself and natural THC itself, but there's a marked difference between synthetic THC and even natural THC and the mix of compounds in marijuana smoke, because marijuana smoke contains scores of other cannabinoid compounds, including cannabidiol, that may have some medicinal benefit on their own.
Yeah. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being absolute worst and 1 being no dangerous side effects at all, how would you rate marijuana as a medicine?
I think in terms of short-term risks,
Short-term
risks would be minimal, other than the effects on behavior. I mean, there are some individuals who are not used to smoking marijuana. When they first smoke it, they panic, they develop anxiety, etc. But aside from those consequences, there are very few, certainly not any life-threatening effects of acute marijuana use. And the reason for that is that, one of the reasons is that there are very few, if any, cannabinoid receptors in the brainstem where the vital centers are located that regulate breathing and cardiovascular responses.
Maybe there's an evolutionary reason why there isn't some
there.
Are you satisfied with the pace and the number of research going on in this country in regards to medicinal marijuana and other problems associated with it?
Well, as you well know, that the federal government doesn't consider itself to be in the business or hasn't historically of evaluating medicinal marijuana. Essentially, the book has been closed after the congressional act that declared, that was back in 1937, I believe, that marijuana does not have any medicinal value, and thus that's why it's a Schedule I compound, and that issue has not been reopened. I believe that the federal government would be, I don't know for sure, but now in these days of budget restraints, when it's almost impossible to get any grant funded. But I believe that the NIH would be interested in evaluating the therapeutic potential of individual cannabinoids in preclinical work, but might look askance at smoked marijuana as a medicinal.
So your study was used by, I believe it was NIDA, to back in 1998 as one of the reasons for their marijuana use preventative initiative. And I'm wondering, do you still feel that your studies are relevant to the marijuana use prevention initiative?
Well, as a pulmonologist, I feel that smoking any substance can be harmful. I mean, we may or may not be able to show convincing evidence of harm in all cases, but we know that smoked marijuana, like smoked tobacco, contains an awful lot of noxious material, and that compounds that we know are tissue damaging, and so that I'm not opposed to the concept of exploiting the therapeutic potential of THC in one way or another, but I would be reluctant to endorse smoking of marijuana for medicinal purposes. On the other hand, I recognize that in 2006 we have limited options in terms of delivering THC for medicinal purposes. Marijuana can be grown quite readily. It's an ubiquitous plant. It can be grown anywhere, and so that you could look upon it as herbal medicine. If it didn't have the baggage of the abuse potential associated with its behavioral effects, there probably wouldn't be much opposition to its use. But the opposition, I think, results from the effects on the central nervous system.
What is it like being in a state where the voters have approved medicinal marijuana? Does that have any effect on your ability to do research or anything?
No. As a matter of fact, I still have to go through the same regulatory hoops that any investigator does in any state, which means you need to get funding usually from the National Institute on Drug Abuse, but in California, there was a California, forget what it was called, it was a California initiative that set aside some funds for research in medicinal marijuana. That has stopped, mainly for budgetary reasons, I think, rather than for political reasons, although I can't be entirely sure of that. Of course, there was a change in the governorship. Right. But other than that program, it's mostly the federal government. You have to get approval from the Drug Enforcement Administration to do any studies involving administering marijuana for any purpose, whether it's for medicinal purposes or to evaluate harmful effects. You have to get FDA approval because it would be an investigational new drug, whether, again, used for looking at harmful effects or beneficial effects, either way. And then your own local institutional review board in California, you have to go through the California Research Advisory Panel. You go through a number of different regulatory hoops, and I think this is true anywhere, in order to study marijuana for any purpose.
It's quite a daunting process.
It certainly is.
And a lot of researchers it's almost impossible, I understand.
It's next to impossible, but not impossible, as Donald Abrams will tell you.
Yes, he will tell, as you will tell me, because you're obviously doing. We had tried. This lung cancer study was of great interest to us, and we thought that well, maybe there is a potential beneficial effect from in preventing lung cancer, and it certainly deserved to at least be researched.
I wouldn't go that far. Well, I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't say that there's a potential benefit of marijuana. There might be a potential benefit of THC.
THC, yeah.
Yes, right.
There's something in the marijuana, whether it's the THC or one of the other cannabinoids. There's something in it that might be a benefit. Anyway, we just thought this, it should at least be studied. And so we wrote a letter. A group of us wrote individual letters to our representative, Jerry Lewis, and he sent us a letter back that I would just like to share with you. we asked him, we sent him a copy of the article about your study, and saying, we think it at least deserves to be, because lung cancer is such a dangerous disease and all this kind of stuff. And he wrote back that the study headed by, apparently he contacted your office. He said that the study headed by Dr. Donald Tashkin certainly provides some interesting results. Not mentioned in the article included with your correspondent were comments made by Dr. Tashkin's research partner, Dr. Michael Roth. Dr. Roth contends that those who smoke marijuana have significant inflammation to their breathing passages, very much like those who smoke cigarettes, which reduce the body's ability to fight disease and infection. And should that be a reason not to? What is your comment on that?
Those inflammatory changes, I'm a co-author of those papers. Right. Those studies were carried out as part of our own research program, and Dr. Roth is a collaborator of mine, and we have indeed shown evidence of airway injury, both visually as well as microscopically, that I alluded to before. But those effects are effects of smoking. Mm-hmm. If you were able to deliver THC in some other form, you wouldn't see these pro-inflammatory effects. You'd probably see anti-inflammatory effects. But that supports my view as well, and I'm in agreement with Dr. Roth, that smoking would not be a reasonable route of administration for therapeutic purposes, say for inhibiting the growth of cancer, if it turns out to be truly have an anti-tumoral effect.
But vaporization might be.
I think vaporization is an interesting and certainly less harmful route of delivery of THC for medicinal purposes. I wouldn't deliver it to prevent cancer. I would deliver it to relieve pain or for some other purpose.
Okay. Doctor, what are your future plans? Do you have any other studies in the works that you might be able to share with us?
As I mentioned to you before, that we're primarily interested in looking at the anti-inflammatory effects of THC, its effects on the immune system, effects on the ability of the body to mount an immune defense against infection. Mm-hmm. That's number one. Number two, we still have tissue from our marijuana cancer studies. We actually took smears of the cells lining the cheek. These are buccal smears, and from which we can isolate DNA. We have isolated DNA, and so we're looking at genetic susceptibility to cancer. So if you look at risks in subsets of our population for developing cancer, mm-hmm. those who may have more or less susceptibility, we might find different results. We're also looking for possible effects of smoking on alterations in the genetic material. So that work is proceeding as well as the work on the immune system.
Well, it sounds like you have your work cut out for you. One last question, this is kind of an overall thing. How has your feelings about marijuana changed over the 30? Is it still the same as you thought about it 30 years ago, or has it changed as you've done research and read about more research?
Well, that's a good question. I'm more. I am less worried about certain potential harmful effects, like the effects in producing chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and emphysema, and even carcinogenic effects. I can't say that there's absolutely no effect, but I'm less concerned about the carcinogenic potential. And I'm also more intrigued about potential medicinal benefits.
Well, Dr. Tashkin, I want to thank you for taking the time. You've been the most enlightening interview I think I've done in all the shows. So thank you very much for joining us today. And if you have any questions, give us a call. We'll be glad to answer them for you and provide you information about our program. Thank you very much. There you have it. Dr. Tashkin saying, well, he's not as worried about marijuana as he used to be. That is really something. This was the guy that thought marijuana caused lung cancer. This is the guy that spent 10, 20 years of his life researching the effects of cannabis on the lungs, and is bold enough to say, hey, listen, I was very, very concerned about it, but after the research I've done, I'm not as concerned about its dangers as I used to be. He still is very adamant that smoking marijuana, like smoking any kind of vegetative matter, is going to irritate the lungs, and that's why his answer on vaporization was interesting, because of course vaporization bypasses all this problem. This is
You
why
don't burn it.
You don't burn it.
It's vaporized.
Right.
There's no flame. There's no fire.
Actually, when it comes through, the marijuana that's left after you've smoked it looks pretty much like the marijuana did before you smoked it. So you got to be careful because you might be getting used marijuana on the market there from people using vaporizers. So you got to be careful with that. But we encourage you to use vaporizers. And one of the shows in the future, we're going to have somebody on here with a vaporizer. It's going to tell you all about it and why they're important. But vaporizers is the way to go.
Dr. Tashkin points out another thing. We need a lot more study about what's going on with marijuana. We need the government to be funding study, and we need your help to get the message out so we can call our congressmen and let people know that we need to really find out the benefits of this drug as a medicine.
And the fact is, even Dr. Tashkin says, when I asked him what are the medical benefits of marijuana, he listed a whole bunch of them. He didn't parrot the government's line, there is no medical use for it. He knew there is medical use for marijuana. He is just concerned with the delivery system. He doesn't like smoking, but he's not as concerned as he used to be after his studies, that's all. But he still says smoking is not really the best way to do it. And that's why the studies need to be done on vaporization especially. And I wish Dr. Tashkin would do these studies, because if he would do the studies, everyone would listen, because he's such a prominent researcher in the field. And it was a pleasure having him on the show, and I hope this excited you and stimulated you enough that you want to learn even more than you learned on today's show. And you can do that by coming to one of our meetings. And we have 2 meetings every month. Our first meeting, we meet on the first Sunday of every month at 3 p.m. in the Cathedral City Library, located at the corner of Dave Palm and Dave Kelly, across from the post office. We meet in their community room. We have great speakers, and we encourage you to come. We also have a second meeting. Why don't you, Red, tell us about the second meeting?
It's in Joshua Tree at the Joshua Tree Community Center off of Sunburst. The address
6171 Sunburst Avenue, and it's on the second Wednesday of every month at 7:30. So, Cathedral City Library, first Sunday of every month at 3 p.m. Joshua Tree Community Center in Joshua Tree, the second Wednesday of every month at 7:30 p.m. That's 7:30 p.m. Right. So we got afternoon, we got evening.
And we would love for you to come out and get to know us. It's a fun bunch of people, and you'd enjoy it.
That's right. And we hope you've enjoyed our show today. We want to thank you for joining us tonight on Marijuana, Compassion, and Common Sense. Invite a friend to come over to your house and watch the show with you. Get some popcorn, because it's really, this is how we get the word out. We're depending on you to get the word out. So tell your friends about our show and come on down to our meetings. And so until next week, this is Lanny Swirlston. Give us a call at 799-2055. Good night.
Nothing grows but weeds. Sometimes she goes, then she lays down and she breathes. There's a person in every crowd, a group. The soil was weak. 'Cause where the rose won't grow, that's where you find the weed. That's where you find the weed. He was a busker on the street. She walked by, she threw coins at his feet. He looked into her eyes, seen the pain welling up inside. He said, "Now, can I buy you a coffee? Maybe I can help you see." He scooped up a handful of change out of the other. Come on, it's starting to rain. He said, "Now, there's a place in the field where nothing grows but weeds. Sometimes she goes and she lays down and she breathes. There's a person in every crowd, a group, even though the soil was weak. 'Cause where the rose won't grow, that's where you'll find weed."
I am less worried about certain potential harmful effects, I think.
I concluded that marijuana is a necessary nutrient.
Well, at a time when people were dying all around me, we were doing anything we could to try and save people's lives.
They should reclassify the drug and take it out of Schedule 1 and put it into a schedule that can be monitored and dispensed.
That's where you'll find